I always have a hard time like analyzing my own music, but I've gotten enough feedback from a few people that definitely see it as like, either a step forward or a step sideways, like kind of like, oh, interesting. And I think part of that has to do with the limitation that I set on myself to basically finish the album in a month, writing, recording, mixing, mastering. And I had, I guess, two or three finished, and then made that decision.
Yeah.
So, most of it wasn't even started. Or if it was just literally one germ of an idea that had been sitting on my hard drive. So, I'd never done this before, where I basically booked off all work from outside artists, and had my kid's mom take the kids for 2 weeks, in exchange 2 weeks down the line.
That's nice.
Right. And then the heat was on. I was like, okay, Jordan, you have no excuses. There's the empty page in front of you. The horror of like the empty page, right? You can start anywhere, and you have to start, and you don't know where. So I put myself in that sort of pressure cooker, and it's real, because if I didn't come out the other side with a finished album, I got shit to do for the rest of the year. I need to get the record out, like I do make a small profit off these records. So there is like I want to put them out, I need to get them out. So if I didn't finish, I would be very upset with myself. So I made sure to finish. Yeah. So I think that inherently, that imposing that limitation of time has made it really an album only about things that I'm into in the last month or this summer. You know what I mean? So it's an album that's very localized in time,
right,
to one very short period of time. Most albums are sort of expressions of a year-long or 2-year-long process of you living your life, creating art out of it. Not this one. This was, and I'm not reflecting too far back on the songs. I'm sort of like, what am I thinking about right now? What interests me right now? What music am I hearing that I'm allowing myself to be influenced right now? So in that way, it's fun, and it's kind of like, I like that aspect of it, that it's not this long period of time that I can go, oh yeah, back in 2018 or whatever. It's all like from summer 2022.
Is this the most, I guess, fast you've ever written an album then?
By far.
Really?
By far. Yeah.
No way. So when did you start writing the album exactly?
Well, my intention was to chip away at it over a year as usual.
Yeah.
And I found that by the middle of summer, I only had these 3 songs going. I was like, oh boy. So I had been slow in creating and was a little bit pissed off at myself. And so I needed to light a fire. And so I put an unreasonable limitation on it, which was a month. It really, I gotta say, physically, it beat me up a little bit physically.
Really?
and to a lesser degree, psychologically, I was starting, their burnout is real, of course. At a certain point, I had to just 1 or 2 days just get out of town and go to go get tacos. And that's really all it took, because I was enjoying the process so much that it really didn't feel like work. It was just that, like, by week 3.5, there was a bit of like, just that the sort of stress of repetition, of like constant repetition, was starting.
Yeah.
But that's fine. That was a small price to pay. And then, because you're sitting all day, my metabolism slows down. So I really had to be regular about like, getting up and all that kind of, exercising and kind of eating the same thing. And so which I do on longer projects when I'm producing other projects, is I kind of do go into like a very routine oriented mode.
Oh yeah.
Where Otherwise, I don't. Like I can fall asleep at 2 p.m. or 2 a.m. It doesn't matter, you know.
Yeah.
I can kind of become that like leaf in the wind if I let myself do it. But when when I need to keep a regular schedule, I really keep regular. You know, I look back, I find like well, for this one, I listen to the same album every morning. I would wake up and I would put on Pete Townshend's Empty Glass. I don't know. I'll look back one day and kind of understand the connection because, you know, musically there's not a lot of connection, but I was definitely compelled in the beginning to just put this album on every day. And I was like, what the, this is like a Who album, but he sings every song. I've never, like, I knew the hits,
Yeah.
you
Oh
know,
yeah.
Rough Boys and Let My Love Open the Door, which are both
It's a happy album. It's such a
wonderful
happy album.
things. Yeah.
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 That's it. If you're
And,
stuck, then you just get happy, and then and then everything flows.
yeah. And
Perfect
I
sense.
like when he goes folky, like he's really good at like that English folk music thing, which you don't really think of Pete Townsend, you know, when you think of slasher power chords and
Right.
whatever, teenage angst or midlife angst. But if you go through the albums, there's you know a handful of tracks where he's doing like finger picking English folk, and that guy does it as good as Richard Thompson when he's on it, you know.
Mm.
And there's one or two tunes where he does that. It's like so cool. So that was on every day. That would sink in. Exercise, caffeine, and then go. You know,
Yeah.
go hard. Like I would go hard for like 6-7 hours. Go to sleep for 3-4 hours, and then wake up and it's dark, and then work for another 5 or 6 hours. And then so this is how my schedule would get very weird.
So one thing that was interesting that you were telling me earlier was that during the day you basically you think more about the song structure in general, and then at
Yeah.
night when you're more in a dreamy mode, that's when the ideas come. Is that is that usually how things work, or do you
Yeah,
process
definitely,
there?
definitely. I find daytime is great. Like I will not track, just from long experience, I will not track drums after dinner.
Yeah.
Forget it. Anyone, not only myself, anyone, because you just had dinner. You know, you're in a different mode than 11 a.m. when you're just
Yeah.
caffeinated and you're ready to go. That's when to do like mechanical things that require energy, just like tenacity, repetition,
Mhm.
perfection, all that kind of stuff. Do that during the day. And then, you know, like I made 2 major label albums, and so there's a gentility about making major label albums that's very conducive to creativity, which is you get to order out for dinner every night, not have to pay for it, and you get to order in wine and stuff,
That's
and you
all.
get to sit with like some British engineer and ask him about UFO albums produced by George Martin and who was doing smack and who which band member was getting picked on like a baby, and you
Right.
know, and then the evenings, you know, you got some wine and you get out the guitars and you start doing the creative stuff, the counter melodies, the background vocals, all that stuff. And so that's definitely carried over into just the way I like to work. And certainly if I have control of the, you know, of how the sessions are going to play out, and certainly when I'm the only one recording them, I can do that. That's how I like to do it,
Yeah.
you know. And have something really good to eat, and spend a little extra on the wine, because this is an event. This is like a ceremony that, you know, you don't want to treat it too regularly. You don't want to treat it as
Militaristically.
too much of a work everyday thing. Yeah, because it is that, there is that element to it. So you need to do everything you can to make it a more aesthetic, more enjoyable experience, because it is hard work. And so you need to be easy on yourself and be good to
Right.
yourself
Yeah.
during the.
Mhm. So when you're making the major label albums, how involved, at least for in your experience, how involved were the labels in the process, in like kind of structuring your even songs as they feel? Say, how much trust do they put in you to do that yourself?
So I was on I was on A&M and DreamWorks, and
Mhm.
I had 100% freedom and 100% trust. I have to say that neither label ever tried to push me in a direction that I didn't want to go. They would suggest things, but usually they were in the ballpark suggestions. You know, okay, Jordan's writing for Jordan went home to his mom's to write songs for the next album. A&R guy sends him a gift package of 10 CDs. There's Full Moon Fever, there's Siamese Dream, there's, you know, Fairport Convention. It's like, okay, cool, thank you. You know what I mean? That was it. I mean, I'm sure, you know, every band's relationship with their label is slightly different. I was lucky enough at DreamWorks to have a relationship with Lenny Waronker, and you know, to have his trust at DreamWorks meant that you had the whole company's trust, basically. So I was kind of lucky in that sense. And A&M didn't even mess with me. I mean, if anything, when we made Bourgeois Kitten, they thought it was too commercial. Like halfway through the record, the A&R guy was like, it should be more like Thurston Moore's solo album. I was like, what? I thought you guys wanted a hit. I thought you guys were signing like the next Nirvana. What the hell's going on? You're lowering expectations.
Yeah, I think like back then, like sometimes they would just sign like complex bands and that were like completely out there. You know what I mean? It's really inspiring how much trust they put in their artists to not just be the standard pop, you know, what you would think of in terms of commercial music. Like they really kind of were able to see things long term and like trust like the complex risk taking without like being too generic, I guess to say. And I heard Jimmy Iovine, when he heard August Everywhere, he wanted another single to it. And you know, and that's when like Pretty Pictures come out, was you know, brought to the forefront, right? Was it is that true? So you wrote Pretty Pictures like to have that be like the Jimmy Iovine type single?
Well, you know, this particular story has never really been told. I don't know if I should tell it, but
you don't have to.
Maybe I can dance around it a little bit. I didn't want to be on Interscope. So when the shit hit the fan, when everything changed and Iovine became the grand poobah of all these former major labels, and he was going through all the acts that were signed to all these labels that he had just acquired, and he had to make an executive decision, and he had to keep the stuff that he thought was going to sell. And he had a very reasonable reaction upon listening to the pre-DreamWorks released version of August Everywhere. So it was made for A&M. Mm-hmm. A&M gets absorbed into Interscope.
Right.
I become an Interscope artist by default. The contracts just became part of Interscope. And so it was relayed to me that, great, Jimmy likes the album, but he doesn't hear a single. Would you be into writing more songs to see if there'd be a single? So here's where things get a little sketchy, is that I was aware that DreamWorks was interested in me. Mm-hmm. So I didn't want to be on Interscope. So I kind of got myself dropped by saying no. However, I had written Pretty Pictures, which was at that time, certainly to some people's ears, a reasonable, maybe a single, maybe that's a single. So I got dropped the next day from Interscope. And then, within 2 weeks, I was signed to DreamWorks, which was my goal and kind of the dream of anyone in music at that time. That was like, anyone in music, everyone wanted to be on DreamWorks at that time. That was like, they had cash and they had this reputation of, they'd already signed Rufus Wainwright, they'd signed the Eels. They were signing cool acts, and if you were like a young act in the 90s trying to be heard on some level, and a major label wasn't disagreeable to you, DreamWorks was where you wanted to be. So it was like, hell yeah. So I signed to DreamWorks. I gave them Pretty Pictures and There's Nowhere You Can Hide. And they were, yeah. I played Pretty Pictures over the phone to Luke Wood, and he was like, oh yeah, get down here. Let's record this.
Yeah.
It's called David Campbell.
So good. So who made the choice to bring in David Campbell?
So Ken Andrews was here 2 weeks ago, and we were discussing just this, and we couldn't remember. And then he remembered. He thought it was Justin Meldell Johnson, bass player of Beck and many other superstar amazing bands, and producer, was, I think, doing, he was either, I think he was doing musical tasks and kind of working the front desk for David, you know, like being his phone call guy.
Mm-hmm.
you know, and we were pretty sure that it was Justin who said, hey, you should get David Campbell. This guy is wild. And that totally rings true for me. I don't have the exact memory, but Ken was like, yeah, I think he's like, I'm pretty damn sure that's the way it went down. And it does feel like that's how, because we couldn't remember. It wouldn't have come from me because I wasn't aware of them, and Ken wasn't aware of him either. Mm. So, or it could have come from Steve Churchyard. I'm just thinking about it now, because I know he had worked with David before. It's tricky. We have to ask Justin.
That's so cool though. You got a lot of like iconic figures to be on that album, and it's such a good one, really love it. So yeah, so Ken Andrews was here. That's another huge influence of mine from the band Failure and countless other recording projects. So you were telling me who was the person who introduced you to Ken, and how did that come along?
It came about through my then manager and still best pal, Mike Friedman. Mike was managing me, and he had his ear to the ground as far as like indie rock more than anyone at all. Like he bought every release that came out on every indie label and every alternative band on major labels. I mean, he was just up on everything. And Failure came onto his radar, and he used to have a place in Montreal where he would kind of host soirees after indie rock events. So became known as like the place for Urge Overkill or Failure to come and, you know, have drinks and smoke dubs and listen to music. He had this big loft apartment right in the zone, you know, downtown Montreal. So so Failure came through town, and it was like, you know, they showed up at Mike's, and Mike was thinking about managing me. I was in the band Tinker with Melissa Oftermar and our friend Steve Durand, and Mike was like their friend. And I came along on the scene, joined that band, but Mike had heard some of the recordings I had done at home here on 8-track at my mom's place, and he was like, oh, I want to manage this guy. So he kind of, you know, plucked me out of that situation, sort of, and then got me signed to a major label very quickly. So the hunt was on for a producer. We released the first Blinker of the Star album as demos, basically, that they were. We kind of thought it was just a cool punk thing to do and not redo them. We were offered money to redo the whole album in a big studio, which I wish it would have done, but I don't know. It certainly has a charm to it. So the hunt was on for a producer. So we were getting suggestions from the A&R staff at A&M, and then we were coming up with our own list and checking out different people. We went down to New York and met Kramer, and, you know, met a few people and worked with a guy in New York that was great. And but Mike was like, you should work with Ken. This guy's young. He's like a sonic madman. Listen to his albums that he's produced. And he had produced one other band or something that we'd heard, and we were like, yeah, this guy's got the sounds. Like, this sounds better than anything else out there right now. No vibe and a heaviness. So it was arranged like when we played so we started saying, yeah, Jordon and Ken should meet. So it came through Mike Friedman, and then the record company were kind of like, okay, all right, can't stop you from meeting him. I was signed out of New York, and then I started having a life out in LA, which, you know, they had no control over me. They had no one to look after me out there. So I was meeting everyone that I wanted to meet and moving forward. So, yeah, Ken and I met in the lobby of the Hollywood Roosevelt. He came in with like, it's like long silver coat, sort of cocky, loose fitting pants, and like aviator sunglasses, which he did not take off inside. And he gave me like total awful handshake. He was like, "Hi, I'm Ken." and we got along. Like it. What was amazing about this visit, you know, we haven't hung out like that in 11 years.
Yeah.
So, you know, what was so fun about this is that you remember exactly why we love each other. It's like we didn't shut up for 84 hours. I mean, he got off the plane, we started talking, and this is just like effortless back and forth. I mean, we just have a chemistry that's sort of undeniable, not only in working conditions, but just in hanging out conditions, you know?
Yeah.
But it just reminded me of what a special and remarkable relationship that is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, so what? I'm very excited to see the documentary myself. So do you feel like you got enough material to accomplish your goal of kind of getting to the core of what who he is?
Yeah, like as I was saying, we just talked, right? So at a certain point, we turn the cameras on, and we sort of come up with like a framework of what, you know, a timeline of where we want to start from and get to, or a couple of subjects we want to get through, and then pick a locale here on the ranch somewhere, either outside. We did like a drone shot of us like walking through the forest path, which was great, and picnic table out in the backyard, and in the studio by the drums. So we had these different environments of chatting. And I think they filmed over 3 days. I think they got like 15 or 16 hours. And then when the cameras would stop, we just keep talking.
Yeah. That's a lot of footage. That's cool.
But yeah, I do think, I mean, Ken was in a mood to really bare all about that band and about, you know, some of the gnarlier things that went on in the business and in interpersonal relationships in the band. I mean, I think he has a lot of editing to do, but I think it's not just going to be you know, a rock and roll doc where it's just like talking heads saying how cool the band is and all that. I mean, that's where any doc can go very easily.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of footage that already exists, you know. And Ken's you know, he's just completely correct in that he needed someone who knows him enough and that he feels comfortable enough, you know, saying these things to, and someone that's invested as well. And we've just been invested in each other's lives for so long that anything that happens to either of us is immediately interesting to the other person. So
yeah.
I pulled some good stuff for sure. Nice. I'm happy. I think it's going to be cool.
I bet. So 2023 next year, right?
I'm pretty sure. I mean, there's a lot of work to be done.
I bet.
It's you know, editing film is crazy, and he just had this project dumped on him from the previous company, and it's like, oof, it's a lot, but he loves it. He loves working in video just as much as audio. So it's like, it's a lot of work, but it's pleasurable for him to do that.
Cool. So this is, I mean, it sounds like a personal question, but personally, I've been listening to a lot of Reasons to Be Beautiful, the song.
Oh, yeah.
I love that song so much. That's a whole song on the album Celebrity Skin. I hadn't really paid much attention to it until recently, but like listening to it now, like that's an amazing song.
Wow, I need to throw it on.
Yeah. It's Yeah, it's up there. But so what so how did that come to be? So I think Courtney Love saw a show that you were doing and
Yeah,
write songs with you, right?
yeah. Hole was rehearsing in New York, and Melissa and I were dear friends, and we were playing at Brownies, I believe, that night, and might have been somewhere else, but I think it was there. And I called Melissa and said, "Hey, do you want to come to the show?" She said, "I'm rehearsing tonight, but I'll try. I'll try." So Melissa went. Well, no, she said, "No, I'm coming. I'm coming," because she went to the rehearsal, and they had been jamming for an hour or two, and then Melissa said, "Listen, I am sorry, but I am definitely going. My friend Jordon is playing. I am definitely have to leave right now. I'm so sorry." And Courtney goes, I'm coming." So Courtney and her went. And then Courtney loved the show so much, she sort of like, at the end of the show, I mean, this is a CMJ show where you got to get your shit off the stage fast. There's this pressure, like, get off.
Yeah.
So we're like, we finished that, and it's like, get the fuck off the stage. And then you see like the audience sort of split, and like her walking up, and I was like, oh fuck, it's Courtney. Shit. And she's like, yeah, me. So I'm like, me? She's like, hey, that was great. It was a really good show. Your band, you and I should write songs. You come out to LA and write some songs. I was like, yeah, I'd love to anytime. She's like, okay, cool. It was really fast, as I remember it. May have gone on for a few minutes, but I was on the front of the stage wrapping cables, talking to her.
Mhm.
That was for sure happening. And she was like, okay, cool. So we were on tour. I think we started going out to the Midwest, and this leg would end in Kansas City.
Mhm.
So a couple nights before we got to Kansas City, Melissa called me and said, hey, Courtney wants you to come out and write songs. Do you want to come? And I was like, okay. So we did our last show in Kansas City. In the morning, the band, pissed off, drove the van back to Montreal without me. I flew to LA to go write songs with Courtney Love. They were fucking, well, one guy was pissed. And so that's how that began.
That's crazy. So you I think you're saying you it was kind of a band setting, so you were just kind of jamming together and you would come up with ideas. How much how much voice did you have in the lyrics? Was it mostly kind of the song structure and the you
Oh,
being part of the band?
none.
Issue? No lyrics?
That's all.
Or,
Lyrics are Courtney's domain. Oh yeah, yeah,
yeah. So you're part of the you
yeah.
kind
Just chords.
of
I came up with the chords in the chorus for that song, The Change, and the first note of the melody. I was like, it should go,
nice.
and then we kind of worked that part out. She had the title already, so it was like trying to fit the melody into. And I think like that riff had been around for a while. I think they had, because I noticed Charlotte from the Go-Go's has a songwriting credit on that as well. So like I think Charlotte may have been involved in like the verse part. The first chords were already written when I got there, and they needed a chorus. And I was like, go to F. And she was like, oh, that's so Alice in Chains. She's like, it's so Alice in Chains. I love it.
That's awesome. Yeah. That F that is kind of what makes a song though. The shift to kind of down, I guess,
right.
whole step, I guess it is, from the G minor.
From the G, or yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
I just remember big blocky bar chords.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no. So quintessential, really. Like it's hard because there's so many of those kind of songs out that like recognizing one as great takes time to do, so now you listen and it's like great. At the time you're like, oh, this like reminds me of other things too, so it's hard to really pinpoint it, but like it's really, it's so good. And I feel like your whole clique with you, Ken, and every musician that you guys are a part of basically has that attitude of kind of longevity of and that holds up like musically and vocally too. Like I've seen Failure like at least 4 times in Philly here, and his voice sounds like exactly the same, and your voice always carries exactly the same weight. And like, is there kind of like a culture of like vocal care that you guys do, or like what kind of, like, I feel like anyone else who sings that way is gonna fry their voice out. But what do you think it is? Is it like a mental kind of
Well,
honesty keeping that
Ken,
afloat kind of thing, or?
I think for Ken, it's probably more work because he sings live. I don't really tour, so I mean, I only have to sing these songs once in my life and never again. So it's not, you know what I mean? So I don't mind taking care to sing them really well. And I think technique wise, I've gotten a bit more accurate over the years and in being able to specifically just uh put the intended emotion into certain lines or certain lyrics or whatever. I think I used to look at singing in the studio as more like a mechanical process that needed, just needed to be precise and in tune.
Mhm.
And I guess like over the years, I think I've gotten a bit more confident in my voice in that people have told me they like it. so so I'm like, oh, well, what do they like about it? Well, they like maybe that they can sense some emotion into it. So why don't I not hide that anymore? So I think like in the last maybe 10 years, that's sort of maybe been something that I like about like the last batch of records is that I like the singing on it. I'm also not singing quite as high as I used to, which
Mhm.
make because it was always like Blow the Sliding Doors is always out of my range. It was out of my range when I wrote it, and it's out of my range now. And I always need help from like the dude, whoever can do falsettos the best in the band is going to do the high parts.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And it always works out great. But like I used to try to sing that shit the way it is on the record, and it's punishing.
Mhm.
So I just wouldn't write something like that anymore. That's that high. I would just have someone else sing it that can sing high. so
I bet. Yeah, it's not
I think,
not the easiest sing along, but it's a great
yeah. So I just think that the newer records are probably, um, I don't know. I just find them a little more emotionally relatable, just because the singing is maybe a little bit more natural, perhaps.
cool. Yeah, I think what it is a lot of like 90s singers, there was kind of a culture of like being of not using very good diction while they sing, and you're very clear with that. I think a lot of people that listen to it can just immediately just appreciate that. And that, like, you
Okay.
don't learn from that too. It's like a very strong choice in having like all of your lyrics clear and really easy to understand. Maybe not some of the earlier stuff, but but
No, or
like
or
from August Everywhere on, you can basically hear every single lyric exactly how it is.
yeah, yeah, for
Um,
sure.
and I think people listen to that and they think it puts a smile on their face a little bit, like me too. But
Good.
cool. So I think we only have like 1 more minute on the Zoom. Uh,
Okay.
yeah, unfortunately. But so one more question. So there's an Eight of Hearts song I noticed on your Bandcamp. I haven't
Yeah.
listened to it, but you have an album called Eight of Hearts, and there's,
Yeah.
I kind of triple checked that there's no Eight of Hearts song on there. But no, there's
The lyric came out, the lyric Eight of Hearts, it fits so well when I was writing the words for the verse. I just had to put it in, and I was like, why not call the song that? Because I love, Houses of the Holy. There's a song called Houses of the Holy on Physical Graffiti, but it's not on Houses of the Holy. It's
right.
like that. It's
Okay.
just me copying my heroes.
That's fun. That's always fun. And
It's a good starting. It's a good
yeah,
starting point.
yeah. So while you were making your new album, so you have Ukrainian ancestry, and the record's titled Love Oblast. Is there any is there any themes in the lyrics about that, or was that what was just inspiring you at the time?
So yeah, there's nothing in the album lyrically that addresses like the war or anything like that. But I just love this word oblast that's come into the vernacular. And yeah, I'm like deeply invested in like I do pay attention very closely, and obviously, you know, ragingly pro-Ukrainian, for many, many reasons, least of which is my ancestry. Um, um, but I did want to make reference to it because it did, you know, it was hanging over the whole process, you know. So I couldn't ignore it. My friend Jarek from Poland, actually, who played a lot of the synths and guitar overdubs on the album, we were kind of just like joshing around with like words and stuff, and like through a text misunderstanding, I like misunderstood something he wrote, and he wrote back the words Love Escape. And I was like, oh, that's a cool title. And about 10 minutes before, we had just been talking about how much like I love the word oblast. And he just wrote Love Oblast. And I was like, oh, because it does work on so many levels. Yeah, there's the reference to Ukraine and Russia, because they're the only two countries that break their provinces up into what they call oblasts. So it's, you know, it's definitely a direct reference to that. But like, it's also, you know, a lot of the lyrics do reference like past relationships for sure. And just like, just on a sort of localized level, like where I live is like a mini oblast. You know, it's like 50 acres, and it's like, you know, it's sort of just my little zone, you know, where I conduct operations, musical operations, and operations of the heart.
That's a nice little nest you got going.
That's a love operation.
Cool. Well, okay, so I have maybe one or two more questions if you have time.
Sure.
So it'd feel kind of uncomfortable not at least mentioning the Stranger Things running up that hill. How proud of you were you of yourself when you kind of called that being an amazing song before anyone else did?
No real pride at all. I mean, it's such an amazing piece of work, and that album is, you know, in my top 3 albums of all time. And it was just great. It was, to me, it's just such a cool thing that like teenagers are into Kate Bush. You know, we're being exposed to that. My daughter, of course, who, you know, used to go to sleep to the We Draw Lines CD. It was like her bedtime music, you know, knows that dad covered that song for many, many years. So when her friends in grade 6 started saying, hey, have you heard Running Up That Hill? She was like, my dad covered that 10 years ago. I've known that song for a long time. That's an old one.
Teach your friends what covered meant, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. And also one last thing. So I was lucky enough to see Lindsay Buckingham at the Keswick Theater a couple of I think less than a year ago. But yeah, it was an amazing show, and he's one of the greatest guitarists I've ever seen live by far. But yeah, Swan Song was played, luckily, and he's playing the song extensively. So tell me what it was like having your song accidentally plagiarized by by Lindsay Buckingham.
Heart stopping. I was driving, I was like doing errands on a Saturday morning, and Lindsay's album had come out the night before. So I was like, I'll just listen to Lindsay's new album while I'm doing, you know, my stuff. And then Swan Song came on, and when the chorus came on, I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Oh shit. Brad and I wrote this song. Like I knew immediately what happened. Like within 20 seconds, I knew everything that had happened. That he had, because I'd worked with him, and he re-demos, right? Like he took some of my songs and then Lindsayized them in his own demos, and then we went and did a real version. So he heard our demo 20 years ago, 25 years ago, and then did his Lindsay demo of it, then forgot about it. So then when he rediscovered his Lindsay demo of our song, he had not made a note that it wasn't his song. He just forgot.
That's crazy. So
Yeah.
so you guys wrote the song together and gave it to him, or was that a collaboration that you did with him?
No, Brad and I wrote the song. It was called Mind's Eye. It's on YouTube.
Mm.
Yeah, so that it was presented to him in exactly that form as Mind's Eye. And he used the chorus melody and lyrics.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's
It was weird.
that has to be a strange experience for sure.
It was absolutely bizarre.
Cool. Well, that's I think as many questions as I have. If you have anything else to add, feel free to.
No, I'm good, man. Thank you very much. That was fun, as
Cool.
always.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Jordon Zadorozny. And new album Love a Blast comes out November 10th.
You got it.
Thank you so much.
All right, buddy.
Bye-bye.
Later, man.